She took a medium-sized knife from the kitchen. She usually peeled vegetables with that knife, and from her son's room she took a toy gun. Hello, welcome to another episode of Criminal Patrol. Contrary to appearances, what you see behind me is of course a burning fireplace. It's not winter and not a lost episode, but it's May. We're already past the middle of May. Well, the temperature is such that we just had to run home and light the fireplace, so that's just for clarification. But getting back to today's episode, it starts with a robbery at a bank in Niemce on October 27, 2023. But it's actually a branch in Kurov. A bandit bursts in. It's around 10:20. He's wearing a black jacket, zipped up to the neck, black shoes, black gloves, a balaclava, big goggles, blue pants. He bursts into the bank. He runs up to the counters where the ladies are working and shouts that this is a robbery. He really is dangerous. He is determined. In one hand he has a knife, in the other something that looks like a gun. One of the ladies, one of the cashiers, tries to fight back, tries to resist in some way. She doesn't just let him take the money. There is a struggle between the lady working there and the bandit. The bandit is really strong and determined. The cashier jumps back. At some point, it turns out that she has a broken finger. The bandit steals the money. He drops some of the money, but he takes about 30,000 zlotys and runs out of the bank. The cashiers still see him as he runs toward the S17 route, and then he disappears into the fog. Of course, the police were put on alert. The cashiers called the police, the patrol cars arrived and started their operation. Roadblocks were set up, especially on the exit roads towards Lublin and Puławy. Police officers appear with long guns and tracking dogs. An attempt at such a blockade because everything indicates that the bandit simply escaped somewhere in the direction of the SE17 route where he had a car waiting. Hence the assumption that maybe that's the direction to search, but it was all for nothing. Those roadblocks, even though the entire area was thoroughly searched, they searched the cars that were passing by. There was no trace of the bandit. In the town of Kurov there was panic because it's usually a peaceful place. Nothing like this had ever happened before, and suddenly there was a bank robbery, so there was panic throughout the whole town. News like this spreads very quickly in towns like this. Even the school principal, together with the mayor, decided that classes needed to be shortened. That parents have to come pick up their children, pick them up in person, or pick up those children who are from outside Kurov from the bus stop. That's exactly what's happening. People are scared because, after all, an armed, dangerous criminal has appeared somewhere in the area. And anything can happen. It's not out of the question that someone might run into him, and it could simply end badly for them. A four-person family lived not far from Kurovo. Lukasz practically worked all day long. He worked in a workshop. Lukasz practically worked all day long. He worked in a workshop where they repaired trucks. He worked on a lathe, so it was hard work. Also, when he came home, he basically had a second job, you could say. At home, he privately repaired passenger cars. He had a knack for it, so he had a lot of clients. But practically his work lasted all day. All day from dawn till night. When he came home, he was already tired. The family practically didn't see him. His wife, Anka, a 37-year-old woman, was also tired because there were two kids at home, two teenage sons. And Anka herself was in the 8th month of pregnancy. Well, that's obviously a problem too. Um, it's a bit of a late pregnancy. She's 37, so that's a big challenge, especially since, well, yes. Besides those four, Anka, Łukasz, and their two sons, the mother-in-law also lived with them. She had also been in poor health recently. She was ill, so they also had to take care of the mother-in-law. Well, like many, probably thousands of families like this, they didn't have a bad life. On a daily basis, let's say, they had money, they could afford many things, but there was always something missing. Especially since a third child was due soon, they were thinking about renovating the house and getting as much done as possible. But when they counted their money, it turned out that there wasn't enough for many things after all. So they were planning a fairly modest renovation. Well, Anka and her husband Łukasz were the same age, which means they were 37 years old and they had known each other practically forever, since school. Back then they planned that he would become a mechanic, and that's exactly what happened. She, on the other hand, was more interested in cooking. She trained as a cook and baker. Then they worked together cutting up poultry. And that way they were basically always together. When they got married, their first son came along quite quickly. Anka was not even 20 years old at the time. 4 years later, their second son was born. And so they carried on, I would say, on that farm, always hoping that their financial situation would finally improve somehow. I think the turning point in this family's life was when they bought a new TV. The old TV just broke down, so they bought a new one, and this one had internet access. They also subscribed to Netflix. Thanks to that, they could watch all kinds of movies. Anka especially liked all sorts of movies, especially, as Łukasz said, the kind that brought tears to your eyes. She watched them for hours, for days on end, with tears in her eyes. Her sons often kept her company as well. And it looks like, well, a lot of people watch movies dreaming a little, thinking that maybe what happens on the screen might happen to them too, or will happen in real life. And maybe it was also a bit of an escape from monotony. The monotony of life, from everyday routines and the difficulties of running a farm. Because after all, Anka was practically left to fend for herself, taking care of her sons, being pregnant, and looking after her mother-in-law. So she had a moment for herself, and then she could escape into another world for a while. After that robbery in Kurov, Anka even asked Łukasz that same evening if he knew anything about the robbery. He said, "How would I know? I work all day, so I don't know anything about it." A few more days go by. It's already November 10th, 2023, so just a few, maybe a dozen days since that first robbery in Kurov. This time it's a cooperative bank in Lublin, but it's actually a branch in Puławy. Around 3 p.m., a bandit bursts into this bank. He's masked, dressed in black, wearing a balaclava and glasses exactly the same. It's the same situation as in Kuro, except this time the bandit is even more aggressive. He's swearing, insulting, yeah. As the ladies who worked there said, it was enough to make your ears curl. Again, he's armed, he has a knife, he has a pistol. He's dangerous. Even one of the ladies, just like in Kurov, tries to protect the money, but the bandit stabbed her in the neck with a knife, so she jumped back. The bandit robs about 20,000 zlotys, and he takes the money and escapes from the bank. And of course, as always happens during or after such robberies, the police show up, they process the scene, secure the surveillance footage, and set up roadblocks in the city. But again, just like last time, it doesn't help much. The bandit simply disappears somewhere. Right away, the police also connect these two cases. The robbery in Kurov and the robbery in Puławy. It looks like it could be the same bandit, the so-called modus operandi. It's the same way of operating. So everything indicates that it's the same attacker, the same bandit. And unfortunately, everything also indicates, because crimes like this often come in a series, that this man will continue to commit robberies. So of course an investigation begins. The police are gathering materials, reviewing motives, surveillance footage, records, and also possible routes the bandit could have taken to arrive or escape. That's how it always happens. And in the meantime, well, Lukasz has already decided with Anka that they have to do this renovation. There are some problems because the mother-in-law is very seriously ill at that time, but they decide there's no other way. Here they determined or planned the scope of work in the house, what they would do and when. As I said, there wasn't much money, but the renovation still got underway. Of course, it was tough, but luck smiled on them here, because at the end of October 2023, Anka, excited, tells Lukasz that luck has finally smiled on them. The lucky break was that she'd won the lottery. She even waved some ticket in front of his eyes and said she had really won a lot of money. When he started asking for details, it turned out that Anka had won 900,000 zlotys in the lottery. Well, 900,000 zlotys is a lot of money, so they were really happy, and now they didn't have to limit themselves anymore. The renovation could be bigger, and that's exactly what they planned. They were going to expand the renovation, add the facade, and put in some extra tiles. Well, everything was done on a grand scale, I would say, because suddenly 900,000 zlotys appeared in the household budget. So on the day of that second robbery, on November 10th, Anka went to the gynecologist. She also called her husband to come pick her up. Well, Lukasz wasn't exactly happy about it because he had to leave work early, but he also understood that his wife was tired in her 8th month of pregnancy, so it was no surprise. She went to the gynecologist in Konski, but she was supposed to get from Konski to Puławy, and Lukasz was supposed to pick her up from there. He was waiting for her at the station at the bus stop, but Anka wasn't coming. After some time, she finally showed up. He was a bit nervous, angry, because he had been waiting for her, took time off work, and she was nowhere to be found. She told him that she was late because she ran into her cousin. They started talking, as women do, and that's why she was late. But on the other hand, she told him that the gynecologist said everything was fine, that the baby, the whole pregnancy, was progressing normally, and they didn't have anything to worry about. That was obviously important to him, so he calmed down somewhat. That was November 10th, the next day, November 11th, 2023. Well, we know that's an important day for all Poles, and it's also a day off from work. The whole family sits at the table that day early in the morning. Someone knocks on the door. Lukasz goes to open it. He opens the door and sees that there are police officers standing on the doorstep. It turns out that the police officers have a warrant to search the house. They start searching, checking everything one by one. They also went to the basement. There they found a suitcase, and when they opened it, it turned out that there was over 20,000 zlotys inside. They kept searching the basement and saw some burnt clothing buckles. They went back upstairs to the room where the whole family was, and they said that they suspect Anka of the bank robberies. The family was in shock because, after all, Mom was 8 months pregnant. No one suspected that she could be robbing banks. The family thought it was some kind of mistake, that everything would be cleared up. But Anka was taken by the police officers and brought to the station where the interrogation began. And in such a small town, of course, the news that Anka had been arrested and was suspected of robbing banks spread very quickly. People wondered if it was even possible. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry in this situation. And Anka, well, she told everything in detail during the police interrogation. She talked about how she tried to get money in some other honest way, that she went to banks, that first she tried to borrow money from friends or family, but for everyone she was unreliable. She couldn't borrow that money or get it in any other way. She didn't see any other way out, and here the problems were piling up, because the renovation she borrowed for was consuming all her savings. Because the boys' needs, well, they also needed money all the time, and her mother-in-law's illness. And the fact that she's 8 months pregnant, well, she decided there was no other way. She probably got the ideas from those movies she watched on Netflix, and she decided there was no other way. She had to rob a bank. At first, she thought it would be just one robbery, that this one robbery would be enough to supplement the household budget. But then it turned out during the renovation that first 30,000 she got ran out very quickly. Therefore, she planned another robbery. Probably, if she hadn't been caught, there would have been more robberies. So when she decided she was going to rob, she took a medium-sized knife from the kitchen. She usually used that knife to peel vegetables, and from her son's room she took a toy gun. Probably that inspiration from movies also led her to plan all those robberies quite thoroughly, I'd say very precisely. She would go to the location, meaning she observed those banks and looked at possible escape routes, where the escape route could be if needed. She observed the cashiers working there. She really mastered that kind of criminal planning. She also planned the transportation she would use. For the first robbery, she used a bicycle, and for the second one, a bus. So as you can see, she had everything in her head, everything was planned out. And then she carried out the robberies. She was quite capable because, as you know, she managed to escape every time. So I think she probably felt like she would be a bit like the heroine of those movies she watched so passionately. Well, Anka was placed in pretrial detention because she went to a hospital ward in Grudziądz. There she gave birth to her third son. Łukasz couldn't come to terms with the fact that his wife robbed a bank for a long time, and he even held it against her. After a few months, following a phone conversation, he also went to see his son. Well, at the moment, Anka is still in the hospital. She was sentenced. The sentence is 4 years in prison. She also has to return 35,000 zlotys. If we calculate everything she stole and what she has to return, she basically lost about 6,000 zlotys on this. She also had to pay 2,000 zlotys to the bank teller who had a broken finger. So theoretically, she will be released in 2027, but it's possible that because she has 3 children, her sentence will be shortened. Alternatively, she might get parole here. Right now, Lukasz and Anka's house has already been renovated. Lukasz, by necessity, has to take care of both the house and the kids and somehow find time for all of it. Anka probably felt a bit like the heroine of those movies she used to watch. She will definitely be a heroine in that small town for years to come. People will talk about her for a long time because, after all, TV crews came to the village. All of Poland was talking about her, so she will definitely be well known. She will definitely also be someone special through the lens of those movies she watched. She probably also learned how to rob banks. Although, if someone made a movie where the bank robber is a woman in her 8th month of pregnancy, a mother of 2 children during a home renovation, well, then you probably wouldn't know, just like people said, whether to laugh at the woman from that movie or cry for her. And that's it for today's episode. Of course, subscribe to our channel, and as always, take care.